Now, living at peace with everyone obviously sounds like, a great ideal. But I'm sure that you're like, yeah, but have you met my family? Like, they are seriously annoying. Or you don't have to work with the people that I need to work with. They're like seriously incompetent. While obviously living at peace is the ideal, like I said, we've all no doubt had relationships that break down because of conflict. Evening, everyone. How are we going tonight? Awesome. Tonight's message is going to be a little bit shorter than normal because I'm not Dan, so you're welcome. It was my final year of primary school, and I remember that I got into a fight. There was a kid who I thought was my friend. I can't even remember the reason why we had a fight. I think that he thought he was a bit too cool for school, and somehow I think it was my responsibility to tell him otherwise. Words were said, and then the challenge was thrown down. That's it, let's meet on the Oval after school and sort it out. Now, I know, I can't remember really the reason behind the fight, but I can remember the fight because it was the worst fight ever. It lasted for legit 2 minutes. If you were hoping to see a fight after school and you got held up at your class, you probably didn't even get down there in time to see it. There was a bit of a group of people. We were in the middle. I think that there was a bit of sizing each other up. I think that was because we either didn't really want to fight or didn't know how to fight. There was a bit of push and shove. I think I tackled him to the ground. He must have been pretty tiny. Look at my arms. And that was a big laugh. And legit, fight over. That was it, 2 minutes and it was done. And the whole time I'm like, why am I having a fight with my friend? I don't even understand why we're doing this. Over the last number of weeks, we've been going through a series called Love Does. And we've been looking at different ways that we can show love in action. Obviously, picking a fight with a puny other person is not showing love in action. But we've been looking at different ways to show love in action. And over the last couple of weeks, we've been looking at a couple of different topics. Now, there we go. Number of different things. And as we've been exploring this, and if you've missed any of these two, please jump on YouTube and check them out. As we've been exploring this, we've been looking at the idea that not only is this, when we show love in action, the best life for others around us, actually the best life for us too. Today, we're going to conclude this series and we're going to cover the topic of what does it look like to love when it hurts. Romans chapter 12, verse 17 to 18 says, "Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone." Now, living at peace with everyone obviously sounds like, a great ideal. But I'm sure that you're like, yeah, but have you met my family? They are seriously annoying. Or you don't have to work with the people that I need to work with. They're seriously incompetent. Or have you met the people that live in my street? They are fruitcakes. And you want me to live at peace with them? While obviously living at peace is the ideal, like I said, we've all no doubt had relationships that break down because of conflict. In high school, different friend this time. I had another mate, and we were like mates as. Not only did we go to school together, we also went to church together. He lived a couple of train spots down the train line from me, so we were always catching the train to each other's houses. We were inseparable, and we were did everything together. Until then, we didn't. I can't even remember what really happened, but for some reason we went from being mates as all the time to then just having arguments, and there was conflict, it seemed like every day. We'd be hanging out at school in a group of people and he'd just start smashing into me, and bagging me out in front of everyone else to make him look good. I didn't like it. I'd either go off and be all broody about it, or then I'd argue back, and then the conflict would continue. And it seemed like every time we were together, we were always fighting. I'm sure that you've experienced relationships like this too, where there's conflict and the relationships break down. Maybe for you, it's you said something to a friend and they got all offended by it. Maybe for you, it's you shared a confidence with somebody and they've actually then shared that with other people. Maybe for you, there's conflict with parents because they want you to work harder or study harder and you've had enough. Maybe there's conflict with parents and you're in your 40s or your 50s or your 60s and your parents, they still know exactly what to say to trigger you. Maybe for you, it's that coworker that is just like, you just can't get on with this person. And you've finally had enough and you snapped and you've given them a good gobful the other day. Maybe for you, it's extended family who just live life different to you. And because they've got different values, it's a source of tension. Nothing destroys relationships like conflict. Now, conflict isn't new. There are plenty of stories throughout the Bible of where conflict took place. One of those examples is Jacob and Esau. I shared this morning, normally on Sunday mornings, I'm out with the kids. When we have Bible stories, we often watch a little video. So I thought, hey, let's watch the video tonight. So we are going to watch a video that we would normally watch at Kids Crew about Jacob and Esau. So please, press play.
Stories of the Bible, Jacob and Esau. This is Jacob, who was later called Israel. Jacob was the father of 12 sons, who became the 12 tribes of Israel.
All right.
Jacob had a twin brother named Esau. Even when Jacob and Esau were in their mother's belly, they fought.
Wow.
As the boys grew up, Esau liked to be outside and to hunt, while Jacob was quiet and liked to stay home. Their father Isaac loved Esau because he liked eating what Esau hunted, but Rebekah, their mother, loved Jacob. Esau had a birthright, which means he would get special things and privileges because he was the firstborn. Later on, Isaac, their father, was getting very old, and he wanted to bless his son Esau. Isaac's blessing was very important, and Rebekah wanted Jacob to have the blessing instead of Esau. So Rebekah told Jacob to pretend to be Esau and go to his father for the blessing. Isaac was turning blind, so he believed that Jacob was Esau, and he blessed him. Esau came to his father to get his blessing, but Isaac had already given it to Jacob.
No!
All of this made Esau hate his brother Jacob.
So, if you like that video, jump on our Kids Crew team too. But anyway, shameless plug. Nothing destroys a relationship like conflict, particularly if you trick your aging father into giving something to you that's actually for your brother. So while conflict obviously hurts in a relationship, what is a love response? What's a love response when we come across conflict? Now, some of that response depends on what side of the conflict you're on. Are you on the hurting side, or are you on the person who's done the hurting? Now, in Esau's example, he was the person who had been hurt. His brother Jacob had gypped him out of what was rightfully his. So if you're in a relationship where you've been hurt by somebody, you're like the Esau, how should you respond? The answer is not like Esau. Genesis 27 verse 41 says, Esau held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing his father had given him. He said to himself, the days of mourning for my father are near. Then I will kill my brother Jacob. For everyone playing at home, please don't threaten to kill somebody if they hurt you. There's too much paperwork. Anyway, but seriously though, Esau decided that he was going to respond a certain way, and he responded with anger. Now, the problem that Esau had with responding with this anger is he held a grudge against his brother, and as a result of that, the grudge and the anger actually clouded his judgment. He made some life decisions that actually came back to hurt him in the future. He didn't listen to some advice from his parents. He decided to marry some people outside of his people group. And because of the grudge that he held against his brother, because of the anger that he held, he actually made life choices that came back to hurt him. This is actually the same with me, with my friend. I didn't like the way that I was being treated by him. It was unfair what was going on. And my response initially was to hold a grudge. I went about trying to undermine his relationship with other people when he wasn't around, just like he was doing in front of me. Every time I saw him, all I could feel was just like this pent-up anger inside of me. And it got to the stage where it sort of was completely consuming everything that I was doing. All I could think about was like, this is unfair, what's going on? I don't want to have to deal with this anymore. How can I get him back? Now, we all know deep down inside, though, we've probably been there as well, that that's not the greatest way to respond. So, if there is conflict in a relationship, how should we respond? And the answer is The love response is to forgive. Now, firstly, I'm sure you're saying, thanks, Captain Obvious. Of course we need to forgive. But I'm sure that some of you are probably thinking, yeah, I'm not sure whether I'm actually ready to forgive. I've significantly been hurt by people who've done something to me, and I don't want to forgive them. In fact, I want to get them back. They deserve some payback. They deserve some retribution for what they've done to me, because it would be completely unfair for me to just outright forgive them. And you're right, it probably isn't fair. And you're right, they probably do deserve some payback. But the flip side of that is walking around with anger and a grudge doesn't work. The Bible actually warns against this. It says in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 26 and 27, "In your anger do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry, and do not give the devil a foothold." See, the warning we get from the Bible about holding on to our anger is that over time, our anger actually then turns into bitterness. And I'm sure we've all met people who are bitter at life, and it is never pretty. So our response when relationships break down because of conflict, if we're the one that's been hurt, is to forgive. I do want to qualify one part of that though. Forgiving is different to ignoring, forgetting, or putting yourself in a position to be hurt again. If you're in a situation or a relationship where someone continues to do the same thing over and over again, potentially you're in an abusive relationship, forgiving is fine, but that doesn't mean that you then need to stay in that relationship. Forgiving someone may actually mean showing discernment and saying that this relationship is not good for me going forward. But if we're in a situation where we've been hurt, our love response is to forgive. Now, Tim Keller once said, "Forgiven people forgive." So when we understand our need for Jesus and understand the forgiveness that we've received from him, we're then able to be people who are able to show that same forgiveness to others. Now, this sounds like way easy, but if you've tried to forgive someone, you know that it's really hard. Maybe you've been in a situation where you have been hurt and you've thought you've forgiven somebody, and yet the same feelings of all that anger and bitterness keep coming up. And I know what that's like. I've been there. Several years ago, I was in a situation where some people significantly hurt me. And while I removed myself from that situation, and while I worked through what had gone on, and while I forgave the people and thought that I'd moved on, a little while after that, I then ran into those same people again, and all of those same feelings kept coming back up again. And I realized that sometimes forgiving people is a process whereby, yes, you forgive them at the time, and then it's something that you then need to keep revisiting and forgiving them in the future. Maybe for you, you're someone who actually struggles to forgive people. And you're like, yeah, I just can't do it. I've tried it. No, it doesn't work. I'm not up for it. And maybe God's saying to you tonight, reminding you, hey, remember the forgiveness that I've shown you. And maybe he's calling you into a deeper understanding of what that looks like so that you can then better forgive those around you. So when a relationship breaks down because of conflict, where someone has hurt you, your love response is to forgive. Now, obviously, in conflict, there's two sides. There's the Esau side, and then there's the Jacob side. So what happens if you're the Jacob in the story? What happens if you're the person who has done the hurting? What's your love response? Your love response is to seek forgiveness. Now, once again, thanks, Greg. Really easy. I obviously know that that's probably what I need to do. But I'm not sure whether I'm ready to go and seek forgiveness from the person that I've hurt. I am concerned that if I go and do this, that I'm giving all of the power in the relationship over to this other person, or I am worried about the response that I'm going to get from them. I don't know whether they're ready or not. I think they're going to throw it back in my face. I think that the conflict is going to be worse for me going and actually trying to seek forgiveness. And all of those reasons are valid. In fact, when we read the story of Jacob and Esau, we find that those were the things that Jacob struggled with as well. On his way to going and seeing his brother Esau, the report came back that there were 400 men that were actually joining Esau and coming towards Jacob. And no doubt he was thinking at some stage, am I making the right decision here? Here I am putting myself and my family in danger. Surely it would be easier for me to walk away. Now, if we've read the account of Jacob and Esau, we know that they actually did meet, and we know that there was reconciliation. But if you've ever tried to reconcile with someone else, you know that sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes the other people aren't ready for you to hear that you want to seek forgiveness from them. And that can be really hard. But our response needs to be to seek forgiveness. We can't be responsible for how other people respond. And as sad as it is, and as much as we'd like to have reconciliation in relationships, our responsibility needs to be to seek forgiveness. And this is actually then ended up what happening with my friend, that he did come and seek my forgiveness. We chatted about some stuff. I forgave him for what went on. There was a time where we weren't mates, where it was just easy for us to not hang out with each other. But then in the end, by the end of high school, we were actually mates again. We catch up with each other all the time after high school as well. While I don't get to see him as much as what I'd like now, we were able to work through this love in action about seeking forgiveness and about forgiving. It does come to the question though, why is this so important? Like, why is it, surely it's easier just to go through life and just go, no, I'm not going to go down this path because it's too hard. Why is this so important? Ephesians chapter 4, verse 32 says, "Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forgave you." See, Jesus has already set the example for us. That God saw, and we heard from the verse that Mo read before, that, while we were still sinners, while we were far from God, while we were living life our own way, while we were doing everything we could that was completely different to the way that God wanted us to live, through our actions and breaking our own relationship with God, that despite all of that, God provided a way for us to have our sins forgiven through what Jesus did. And it's through his example on the cross and our understanding that forgiven people forgive, that we are then able to follow Jesus' example and forgive those around us when we're hurt. So when a relationship breaks down, what's the love action? If we're the one who's been hurt, our love response is to forgive. If we're the one who's done the hurting, our love response is to seek forgiveness. Let's be people who show love in action.